Hi guys, this is Charles1K92 here, also known as GM65, off on the PlayStation Store Network. So, this is it, Kingdom Hearts 2 everybody, finally down on this weekly countdown for Kingdom Hearts number 2. So, question, what is it about Kingdom Hearts 2 that everybody likes? Well, everything. Gotta love everything about Kingdom Hearts 2, because the game basically changed, like literally everything. Now, throughout, let's say, Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, Sora's power was good. It was at the beginning level, let's just say, of Sora's career as being a Keyblade wielder. But before we can get to Sora, we need to kind of do a quick recap. So what happened in the last game? Well, Sora was trapped in a place known as Castle Oblivion, and caused him to basically reface all the old worlds that he went to in the first game, minus one, which is Tarzan's world. So, in doing so, he had his memories altered, not willingly, but against his will, by a mysterious group constantly known as the Organization. This was spearheaded by Marluxia, who was the lord of the castle, Larxene, who was his best buddy, I would assume, Axel, who was a spy for the organisation, and also assassin in some cases, Vexen, who was the organisation's scientists, and there was two other members who were busy dealing with Riku, and that was Lexaeus and Zexion. So you have 6 members of this organisation that are just there doing what they're doing. At some point, Sora's memories were altered, causing him to imagine that another girl was Kairi, but wasn't actually her, if that makes sense. Her name is Naminé, and she felt sorry for what she'd done to Sora and promised to refix his put his memories back to where they were originally, which meant that he would not remember what happened in Chain of Memories, but obviously would remember what happened at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1. But there'll be just this gap in his memory that he just wouldn't know what was there. During this time when Sora was there at the castle, Riku showed up, and he went through roughly the same challenges that Sora did, but he didn't get his memory altered. He had to basically challenge against his darkness and how he could conquer it in a way. And thus now we head into Kingdom Hearts 2. Now there is another game which comes out after Kingdom Hearts 2, but takes place during the events of Chain of Memories and then leading up to 2. So you could call this game more or less the game that goes in between these two games, but we're not there just yet. It will be next week. So what has happened? Well, Sora is still in his sleep. He's been asleep for about a year. 1 year of where he's been totally out of action. And nobody knows where Sora is. Right? Only a select few people. These people are Riku, Diz, who Riku met during Chain of Memories, Naminé, and I think King Mickey knows where Sora is as well. So you have 4 people, 2 of which stay behind and look after him, while the other 2 go out and prevent anyone trying to figure out where they are. Now, eventually at some point there's a little snag in the problem, and a young boy named Roxas is needed to help complete Sora's memories. And this is where the game begins for us. So we get a beautiful intro to the game where it shows off the past events, and that is just Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. And then we go into the game. Now when we start in the game, we actually begin to play as not Sora, but as Roxas. Now Roxas is a unique character. He lives in a world known as Twilight Town, where the world is constantly stuck in perpetual twilight. So at some point, they know what time it is to go to bed, what time it is to wake up, and so on. But anyway, so during the time that we play as Roxas, we are playing as him during his last 7 days of vacation. Each day we get to learn a little bit more about Roxas, but we also get to learn how we can control Roxas similar to the way we did in Kingdom Hearts 1 and also in Chain of Memories. Now they have returned back to the classic command style system. However, the triangle button, or the Y button if you're somebody on Xbox, is now used for actual interactions instead of the X button, because the X button was used a lot of times to interact with the world, which was very annoying, but they replaced it with triangle, so it's basically your reaction command as they call it. Anyway, so to kick off the first day, Roxas meets up with his friends, and his friends are Hayner, Pence, and Olette. 3 people. And he goes down, wants to find out what's going on, and apparently a rival kid gang, I guess, run by Cypher, who I think, or Setzer, no, it's Cypher, who is a Final Fantasy VIII character, I believe, along with some other Final Fantasy characters, have been kind of picking on Hayner, Pence, Olette, and Roxas because apparently things were stolen and they're basically blaming them. So, don't know why. But eventually it arises to the attention of Pence that, oh no, all are gone. Gone. They each try to say this word, but doesn't seem to come out. But it isn't just that it's gone, it's also the actual gone as well. And it's a bit of a funny thing if you get the meme for it, so you can actually replace the blank with whatever you want to call it. But anyway, the actual thing that was stolen was a photo, or photographs, or pictures. It doesn't matter how you say it, a mysterious thing has erased this word entirely, which you think, wow, that's a very interesting feat, being able to actually take the name of the object. But it gives us a clue on what kind of world Roxas is living in to a degree. Anyway, so Roxas then sets out his journey to find out who the mysterious thief is, which he does. And this mysterious thief is somewhat wearing a white jumpsuit. Now, when Roxas tries to battle this creature, it's similar to that of how Sora was battling the Heartless. Not hitting it at all. Like, the attacks just don't do damage. So Roxas then isn't too sure what to do, and I know I have kind of skipped a little bit of things here where Roxas does have a small battle with Cypher, or Setzer, or whatever his name is. And that is like a win or lose situation, so if you win, it's good for you, if you lose, it's bad for you. It just depends how good you are at the game. Anyway, but it also gives you basically a slight chance to choose whatever path you want to go down as well. So you get your path choosing point at this stage of the game. Anyway, so going back to facing off this white jumpsuit creature. Roxas tries to battle it, doesn't work. But then something happens. His struggle bat, as it's what it's called, transforms into the Kingdom Key Keyblade. Doesn't know what it is, but decides to use it. Beats the creature. The creature then drops, it drops health orbs, but it also drops the photographs. And the word photo, picture, photograph, all comes back. Roxas then, takes the photographs back, and I suppose that everything goes back to everybody afterwards. But they all notice something, that all the pictures that were taken had Roxas in them. And Pence even remarks to say, well, what if the thief wanted to actually take the real Roxas and not the photographs? Right? But anyway, Roxas then goes home at some point and he goes to bed. Now, we get something which is called restoration progress, right? And every single day that goes past, a restoration progress increases. Basically, something is happening. Someone is being restored back to 100%. Now, when this happens, it's basically showing us the events of Kingdom Hearts 1 again, like from the very early stages, then into the 25% stage, 50%, 75%, then 90%. So it's showing us at these stages. Now, each time that Roxas goes through these sequences, he's remembering somebody else's life, as it were. It's not his own, it's somebody else's, but he can't understand why. So a couple of days go by, and eventually he encounters Naminé, who somehow has the ability to freeze a world solid in time. Speaks to her, realising that these white creatures again are attacking. Naminé asks Roxas to use the Keyblade. Roxas does do this at some point, and thus is transported into the place that Sora went to in the very first game, at the very beginning. Now, this is either the Station of Awakening or the Chamber. It's not the Chamber. It's either the Station of Awakening or the Station of Calling. It's one of these two names. You then get to choose again what path you want to go down. So you can still take the path of the warrior, you can still take the path of the mage, or you can take the path of the shield, the defender. Once you choose these, the white jumpsuit creatures attack again, and you beat them, and so on. You work your way through, and eventually you've got this huge mammoth one, which is similar to massive one, similar to that of the Heartless variants that was in the first game. Once Roxas beats this one, He seems to fall into darkness, but Naminé helps him out. Now then, I think she roughly explains what's roughly going on, but I can't remember, so... Not saying I can't remember, I think she does explain to him, but I think that's near enough at the end of Roxas's journey. Eventually, though, a mysterious man shows up at a particular point in time during the struggle tournament that takes place, I think, not near at the very end, but I'm going to assume halfway through. And what happens is this. This mysterious man is none other to be Axel, and his mission is to bring Roxas back to the organisation. And when I say back, it's kind of like, what do you mean back? Did they have him already? Possibly, but this will be elaborated as we get closer to the end of the story. So Roxas doesn't know who he is, and thus Axel tries to take Roxas back by lethal force, or to the point where Roxas would be too tired, but Axel loses. However, during this time, Diz appears and tells Roxas that the man that he just faced is speaking nonsense, just ignore him. Roxas doesn't seem to be too pleased and seems to, well, shout out Hayner Penson and let's name, and everything seems to go back to normal. Roxas doesn't know exactly what the hell's going on, and even a few days prior, a certain event happened, and nobody else seems to remember that this event took place, only Roxas. Like, he fell off, there's a clock tower that's in Twilight Town that he and his friends would go up to, and he fell off it. But it didn't happen. Another case is when they collected money to go on a trip, but again, didn't happen because a mysterious hooded figure took the money, but nobody else saw it happen. All they saw was Roxas fall over and the money was gone. That was it. Anyway, eventually, as we get close enough to the end with the restoration part of things, Roxas then begins to realise that he isn't dreaming about himself. It's another boy, a boy named Sora. And there is a point where Roxas actually communicates with Kairi, which is Sora's love interest. And this isn't for a restoration, this is actually when Roxas falls off the tower of Twilight Town. And the clock tower at least. And Kairi isn't too sure why she spoke to him, but it just happened. Their hearts must have just been able to communicate each other. And keeping in mind, the worlds are separated and the barriers have been fixed. So this sort of thing can't just happen naturally. It has to be a very unique circumstances. Anyway, so eventually, nearer at 100% restoration, Roxas knows that his summer vacation is coming to an end, literally. He goes to meet Hayner Penson and Alette, only to find that they don't see him anymore. He's gone. It's as if he doesn't exist. He leaves where they meet up and sees Axel again. And because Roxas roughly knows a little bit about himself now, he realises who he's speaking to. Axel himself, seems quite happy that Roxas roughly remembers, but decides to question him one more time. What's our boss's name? Don't know. So Roxas has to face Axel again, but it's not just Axel he faces straight away, it's like these not shadowy creatures, the white jumpsuit creatures. And beats them, and Axel is frozen in place while Roxas makes his way to a mansion that's in Twilight Town. When Roxas finally makes his way there and he gets in, he's protected by this same mysterious hooded figure who defends him, or at least prevents more of these creatures from coming into the mansion anyway. Roxas tries to find out where to go, and he stumbles across the room where Naminé is. And when Naminé tries to explain everything, she's deleted, it seems. But then she reappears again with Diz, and she tries to explain to Roxas that he won't disappear when he meets up with Sora again, he'll be whole, and that everything will be fine. Now there is something else as well. Roxas has been told that he is a nobody. So it's like, well, that's not very nice, but a nobody is actually a species of creature, or it's a special kind of creature, which is only made after a certain event takes place. So, Roxas then makes his way through the mansion a little bit more. He then goes into the basement of the mansion, discovers a computer, and basically he starts to remember something. And what he remembers is this: he has a memory of where he faced Riku. And this is Riku, I'm going to assume, not exactly a year, but probably halfway through the year of him protecting Sora. And Riku has grown quite powerful in his usage of, well, he doesn't have a Keyblade, but he did have another weapon during the events of Kingdom Hearts 1, which was called Soul Eater. And it was a special kind of sword which basically used darkness and a load of other things too. Now, Riku and Roxas faced each other, and Roxas technically beat Riku. He thrashed him in a sense. Riku then decided to use the power of darkness and transformed back into Ansem the Seeker of Darkness, but Riku was more in control. He has more control over this form than ever. And he accepts becoming this character. He accepts becoming Ansem. After beating Roxas, Roxas was taken back to Twilight Town and was placed into a machine, into a computer. Now when Roxas somehow stops having, let's say, a headache, he looks at the computer and just smashes it to pieces, just like letting out all his anger. He then goes into the next room, sees a couple of more of these white suited creatures again, beats them, and Axel reappears one more time. Axel challenges him. Axel ultimately loses to Roxas, and Roxas turns around and says to Axel, "Look, I hope we do meet. We'll meet again." And Axel kind of jokingly says, "Silly, just because you have a next life," and just fades. Now Axel's very prone to fake his death, so don't take this quite literally at this point. Roxas then continues over to the next room, and he sees Donald and Goofy in a pod. And he then looks over to where there's another door, goes through it, and he sees Diz again. He tries to attack Diz, only to find that it's a data projection. It's not really Diz himself. Roxas again lashes out, and he's just kind of fed up about, being used. And he wants to know what exactly is a nobody, and nobody doesn't deserve to know anything at this moment, because that's what Diz says. However, he does say this to Roxas. He says, "You have a lot of anger. Perhaps maybe you should share this anger with Sora. He's far too nice for his own good." Roxas tries to attack again, only for the data protection to eventually just disappear at the end. The bigger pod opens up and Sora is within it. And Roxas finally submits to the fact that my summer vacation is over and then Kingdom Hearts 2 begins. Like, the icon or whatever, the logo, whatever it is, shows up. And then this is where the game then kicks off. Sora wakes up with Donald and Goofy just constantly saying his name. And what happens is, they try to remember what happened, but they can't seem to figure out how the hell they got where they were. So when Jiminy refers back to the journal says, "Thank Name." I wonder who that is. They don't know, because the events of Chain of Memories never happened to them, because their memories were scrubbed. Anyway, they left the mansion, and they chose not to go back in there because they were worried that if they do, they probably might not come back out again. So they continue to go into Twilight Town. They meet up with Hayner Pence and Olette, only these people this Hayner Pence and Olette don't know who Roxas is. They don't even know where he is or anything, because they never met him personally. Anyway, Sora does know that he has a feeling that he's been here before, but can't explain it. It's because since Roxas has gone back to Sora, he is remembering bits of Roxas's life. Anyway, moving further down. Now, eventually at some point, Sora makes his way up to the train station that's there and meets up with the king, which is Mickey. Mickey tells Sora to take the pouch and to board the train that's there, because the train apparently knows the way. Once they do this, they listen to the king. They're kind of happy that the king's okay, and Sora's happy that somehow if the king's fine, then that must mean Riku's okay as well. Anyway, so they board the train. They leave, and they go to a place known as the Mysterious Tower, which is part of Twilight Town's world. Upon arriving at the entrance of this place, they see another Disney character, and it turns out to be none other than Pete, somebody that Donald and Goofy knows. And they say that Pete is somebody who caused them a load of trouble many years ago, and that he was banished by, the king, or King Mickey or Queen Minnie for what he done. But somehow they're very surprised that he's actually here. Pete has said that he knows that a powerful sorcerer lives in this tower and he wants to turn him into a Heartless. So that means Sora, Donald and Goofy have to stop him. They do, and Pete runs away. But Pete does actually work for Maleficent though. Before he even does leave, he does say that Maleficent will be so proud of him. But Donald and Goofy, along with Sora, laughed this off and said, well, she's toast, she's gone. Anyway, so they make their way further into the tower, and realising that it's none other than Yin Sid. He's another Disney character, but he's a master. He's a very well-known sorcerer. Anyway, so when you're there, Yin Sid explains everything to Sora. He explains who the nobodies are and who the organisation is. Now, these nobodies are those white creatures that I was speaking about earlier on, and the organisation is a group of elite nobodies who have retained their human form, and Roxas was one of these things. Starting to see where this is going. Anyway, so Sora then, after he gets some new travelling clothes, because the clothes that he's wearing are now too short for him, he leaves and they get to have the gummy ship again. Now, the lanes that were originally used to go from each world are now permanently closed. But there is a special kinds of lanes that are available to Sora because he has a Keyblade. So there seems to be, not unless an excuse, but more of a plot thing. So if you're a Keyblade wielder, special lanes can be accessed. So you only need to use your Keyblade to unlock these. And there's one world that Sora goes to, and it's Hollow Bastion. Ironically, it's one of the second to last worlds that he went to in the first game, but he's going back there as the second world in the first game. So he goes there and he meets up again with Leon, Yuffie, Sid, oh, and also Merlin. He met Merlin in Travis Town, who Merlin taught Sora basic magic, and that's where it goes from there. And people at Hollow Bastion are actually restoring it. They are trying to repair their world after what Maleficent did to it way back when. Anyway, so when Sora is there, he explains about what's roughly going on, and everyone's kept up to date. The organisation then shows their head. Now, the last surviving members, if there's 6, so 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So technically there's 6 members left, not counting, would it be 6 actually? No, it would be 7. It would be 7 members because Axel didn't die, so technically it would be 7 members of the organisation, but I think 6 of them are physically present. And basically they intimidate Sora and say that, you know, they're very fascinated about the Keyblade and that it would be more suitable in more capable hands. And the organisation are now more of a threat. And so what happens is Sora then activates his Keyblade, or his Keyblade gets activated at some point, to say that, not that he saved the world, but to open up the first lane to basically have him link worlds up. Twilight Town then mysteriously vanishes off the radar, so that's somewhat fine, I guess. And then Sora goes from world to world, basically seeing the worlds that came back from the darkness. Worlds that were saved, that were resurrected. Anyway, so Sora travels to each individual world, solves that world's problem, and then moves on to the next. Eventually, he gets to uncover more or less of a plot that what the organisation is trying to do. They're trying to get Kingdom Hearts, similar to how Ansem was roughly doing it, although the organisation has got a much more nefarious way of doing it. At the same time, Maleficent does make her return, and she's also causing problems from her end. But she's not a boss that we have to face this time. She's more or less an anti-hero / ally, I guess if you could call it. Anyway, but Pete is the one who goes around causing a load of problems, trying to get more Heartless and, you know, help Maleficent gain more power. But again, this all gets foiled by Sora. Now, the organisation is after strong people as well, and they want to turn people into Heartless. And here's the reason why. If a being who is strong enough, whether they are from the light or from the dark, if they are turned into a Heartless, a nobody is created as a byproduct. And even if, let's say, they are very weak-willed, again, the same thing happens. But if they're very strong enough, they get to retain some core features. Hence why the people that are in charge of the organisation were very determined enough to somewhat survive, I guess you can call it. Now, that's how it works. If you become a Heartless, a Nobody is created as well, as a byproduct. Right? Okay. Now then, the organisation, or some of their members, went out to each individual world trying to seek out more strong people and turn them into not just to a Heartless, but also to a Nobody, to either bolster their ranks for their army, in a sense, or just to fill the seats of another member, because Sora, along with Riku, actually defeated a few members of the organisation. But the rest of them are still alive, but they haven't found any replacements at this current time. Eventually Sora goes back to Holobastion, because there's a problem. And the problem is that Maleficent has raised an army of over maybe thousands upon thousands of Heartless, and she's making an attack at the city's walled settlements, as it is. Maleficent ultimately loses at this case, but at the same time, Sora discovers that there's more things to do there. Like, he's found Ansem's computer. Now, this takes place during a time when this invasion's happening, and he meets up with the king. Now, this is about time when you think that Sora's going to get some answers on who the hell is Ansem. You know, who is he? What is he? What has he done? And Sora gets told this, that the Ansem that they faced wasn't the real deal. This wasn't the real bad guy that we're talking about here. And this is like a huge what moment? What do you mean? So we basically wasted all of our time, in a sense, just to defeat a fake. Mickey says, well, yes, but he was still a problem and he still had to be stopped. Anyway, so there was another thing as well. When they gained access to Ansem's computer, Sora was trying to get it to access the database, but he couldn't do that because of the NPC that was there, the Master Control Program. And that is basically Tron's world, because Tron is also Disney property and everything else. So Sora went into the computer by mistake, and he fixed it, and he solved all the problems, and he was able to gain access to the data. When the king came back, and let's just say from doing his patrol or whatnot, Sora showed the king a photo of this person because it appeared on the screen. And the king has met the real Ansem, and this real Ansem is called Ansem the Wise. He was a very wise man. Now, Ansem the Wise was replaced by his apprentices, who was known as Xehanort, Braig, Dylan, Evan, Elias, and Ienzo. I think I've got Elias's name wrong, but whatever. 6 apprentices to the man himself. Xehanort is the main antagonist here. He's number 1 in this case. Now, there's a portrait of Xehanort in Ansem's study. And when Sora brought the king back, he said, look, this is Ansem. This is the guy that we faced. This was the problem. This is where we get to learn about the fake issue of, like, so this is an imposter, so this really isn't Ansem then. He says, no, but he took his name for some strange reason. We don't know why, but he done it. But he's still a threat. And Mickey believes at the time that there's another one going around who looks exactly like this guy and is a problem. And Mickey believes he's in charge of the organisation. So it's like, okay, we'll deal with it when we see him. Eventually the castle is attacked, and Sora and everybody goes to prevent this. Eventually they leave the castle because the Heartless are now coming from another castle that Maleficent made out in the outlands of Holobastion. Sora encounters one of the members of the organisation named Demyx. Now, he met Demyx in Olympus Coliseum when Sora was out travelling. And when he met up with Demyx again here at Holobastion, he finally beat Demyx, and Demyx died. Demyx faded away into nothing. Sora didn't necessarily feel anything except for anger, saying, does anybody else from the organisation like to be next? No. Also, another thing as well, Goofy gets knocked out. Sora thinks that he's dead along with Goofy and even Mickey, and all 3 of them go ahead and charge along against the Heartless. And Sora fights alongside a majority of the Final Fantasy characters that live on that world anyway. After this, they kind of feel sorry about Goofy somewhat either dying, but he doesn't, he's fine, he just got hit on the head pretty hard. Eventually they come into this place which I think is the Great Mall, I think it's called, and this is where Sora faces the Thousand Heartless on his own. But before he does, he sees the leader of the organisation remove his hood, and he looks roughly identical to Ansem. Or at least, as Donald puts it, it's the guy who's not Ansem, it's Xehanort. And he says, well, he doesn't say anything, but it's like, Xehanort, Ansem's apprentice, and this is where, like, he smiles to the fact that he goes, so you know who I am, good. But he disappears anyway. So Sora faces off the Thousand Heartless, and eventually catches up with the King along with Donald and Goofy. When Mickey then questions, let's say, this Xehanort, he says, calls out his name, Xehanort, and he says, how long has it been since I've abandoned that name? And he wants to know what's going on. Sora also likes to know, he says, what's happened to Kairi? Where's Riku? Spit it out. And he says, well, I know nothing of any Kairi, but as for Riku, perhaps you should ask your king. He leaves. Mickey pursues and follows. Sora's pretty pissed. At some point, they're surrounded by Heartless, and Sora fights them off. And another member of the organisation shows up, and it's Axel. And he says it's all part of the master. It's all part of Xemnas' master plan. Now they don't know who it is, but Axel decides to tell them. He says the guy you just saw, Xemnas, Xemnas. Got it memorised. Anyway, he explains it to him and he says that we're going to keep using that Keyblade to get more hearts for their Kingdom Hearts. Then another member of the organisation shows up, somebody known as Saïx, who's actually been pursuing Axel and wants him back to, behave. Sora then realises something, that the Heartless are actually allying with the organisation, and Saïx explains something to Sora. He says the Heartless ally with whoever's the strongest, that's how it works. Maleficent tries to actually intervene with this, but doesn't do very well, and she's defeated. Sora then feels very dejected with the fact that every single time he's using his Keyblade that releases the heart of any Heartless, the organisation's just nabbing it all the time, just picking it off and feeding it to their Kingdom Hearts and giving it to their Kingdom Hearts to make it more stronger. Anyway, the reason why they're doing this, when we get to the end game, which I think we should do that now at this case, is so that they can become whole again, because when you are a nobody, you've lost your heart. You don't have a soul, more or less. You don't feel anything. You basically are an emotionless person, is how it is. And the organisation yearn to have a heart back, and they believe if they have Kingdom Hearts, and when it's fully utilised, they can become whole beings again. At any rate, when I said about Kairi and everything else, the organisation nabbed her when Sora was out venturing. So, they have Kairi locked up in their castle. I know, right? Damsel in distress. Sora then has to go and find a way into this castle. He goes back to Twilight Town because Twilight Town's got a few distortions. Does this, gains access into the data Twilight Town where Roxas came from, and then makes his way into where the organisation world is. Now, at the very, not say at the very end, but at the very beginning of them making their way in, or let's just say, as they're making their way to the world, the nobodies prevent them from going any further, and Axel chooses to help Sora. Axel is somewhat kind of tired, he's kind of very wounded, so he's not at full power. Axel then sacrifices whatever's left of himself, and thus opens up a portal for Sora to go to the organisation's world. And Axel says to Sora that he's sorry for what he's done, but he wanted to see Roxas. He was the only person he ever liked, and he made him feel like he did have a heart. But he hopes that Sora can forgive him, and Sora says, when we find her, you can tell her yourself that you're sorry. And Axel finds it quite funny. Axel truly dies at this point. He's not going to come back as a nobody. Sora then makes his way to the world that the organisation comes from, which is the world that never was. Sora, Mickey, Donald and Goofy are there at this world. Riku is also at this world as well because he's been trying to find out about the organisation as well. Now Diz, on the other hand, does still want his revenge, and he's also on this world. Now Mickey goes off on ahead and chooses to find his own way into the castle, but probably doesn't get very far. As Sora, Donald and Goofy make their way through, they encounter waves of Heartless because the world is very close to the darkness. Eventually, they come to a place where it's called Memory Skyscraper. I think that's right. And Sora then encounters somebody else wielding a Keyblade, and this person attacks them. He wields 2 Keyblades, and sounds a lot similar to Roxas. Well, the truth is, it is actually Roxas. Sora beats Roxas in combat, and Roxas finally submits to Sora's dominance, because Roxas made a promise long ago, and Roxas was not able to fulfill it, but Sora looks like he's capable. And he turns around and says to Sora that you'll make a good other. When he tries to say this to Donald and Goofy, like the man that he just faced, to them, Sora just disappeared, just vanished. And Donald and Goofy had to face off a few nobodies on their own. Sora makes his way up to the castle, uses his Keyblade as a thing to make a path, and thus makes their way into the castle. Mickey goes further ahead on his own, and eventually meets up with Diz, who turns out actually to be Ansem the Wise. And Ansem the Wise has a machine that can capture Kingdom Hearts and take it away from the organisation forever. Sora battles the final members of the organisation, which is Xigbar, Luxord, and Saïx, and then the only one left is Xemnas. Zoldin is also one of the members of the organisation, but he was defeated on one of the other worlds that Sora went to during this time, so that's that. Eventually Sora does meet up with Riku again, but Riku still looks like Ansem the Seeker of Darkness. Kairi is also there, and she's actually rescued by Naminé. And what happens is, Naminé is actually Kairi's nobody. Alright? So, try to come to terms with that, because remember when I said Kairi lost her heart, although she's a princess of heart, she never turned into a Heartless, but she still lost her heart, and a nobody still gets created either way. Same thing happened to Sora. When Sora became a Heartless, Roxas was created out of that. And when the two of them came back together, their powers basically went skyrocketed. It was basically like a fusion and whatnot. Same thing with Naminé and Kairi. Now, when Riku saved Kairi and they were ambushed by, I think, Heartless, if I remember correctly, Riku helps her, but he also gives her a Keyblade. And Kairi is using it, and she's fighting off Heartless, along with Riku. Anyway, so they get to the point where they meet up with Ansem the Wise, along with the King, who are trying to actually digitize Kingdom Hearts and put it into a computer. Ansem actually tells Mickey that it's actually impossible to do this because you can't just encode hearts. Hearts are filled with so many emotions. It's not just as simple as data. So he comes to realization. Xemnas shows up and berates his former teacher and tells him only a fool will be your apprentice, and what I'm trying to do is create a world, one heart at a time. I thought you'd be able to praise me, but all you've ever done is hold me back. Xemnas still continues to berate him, and then eventually Ansem the Wise turns around and says that Xehanort, no matter what you... is like not paraphrasing this word for word, but any world that Xehanort does try to create, it will be an empire of ignorance, which is why you and your creations are destined to fall. And there's nothing more to be said. The machine is about to explode, and he tells Mickey that he's sorry, and he also mentions to Riku that he knows what he has to do. And he looks to Sora. Now, he didn't personally ever probably speak to Sora properly, but he's talking to Roxas. And he says, Roxas, I doubt if you can hear me, but I am sorry for what I've done to you. Farewell, massive explosion, big boom of light. Kingdom Hearts, which is basically a shape like a moon at this point, has got a massive gaping hole in it. And, well, Riku has gone back to looking normal. He doesn't look like Ansem the Seeker of Darkness. And Riku has a Keyblade of his own, which is called the Way to Dawn. And he tries his best to... well, he doesn't try his best. He tries to help... he helps Sora, basically, in the end. Now, at this current point, I would say, what is it? It's at the end game, isn't it? So Sora, Riku, Mickey, Donald and Goofy along with Kairi make their way up to the top of the spire and they engage Xemnas, or at least Sora does for the first boss fight. Then, afterwards, Xemnas then uses the power of Kingdom Hearts, and thus he goes into a pocket dimension of the world, or at least a version of Kingdom Hearts at least. He then uses this to attack Sora, Riku, Donald, Goofy, the King, and also Kairi. They get pushed back out while the remaining four, which is Sora, Riku, Donald and Goofy, face Xemnas off. They beat Xemnas in his armoured form. They beat Xemnas... So they beat Xemnas, Sora beat Xemnas on his own. They beat him together against his armoured form. And then once that was done, you would have thought, oh no, that's over. It isn't. So what happens is Naminé again shows up and she turns around and helps the remaining crew leave because Xemnas is defeated and he's gone. Naminé then speaks to Kairi and Kairi accepts Naminé back into herself and she becomes whole. Roxas actually comes out of Sora and meets with Naminé again and he agrees with her that he said, you were right. I was going to meet you at some point again and every single time that Sora and Kairi are together, we'll be together and that's how it will be. Roxas then re-merges back with Sora and Sora's back to being a complete being. Kairi says it's time for them to go home, but the castle that they're standing on starts to get massively damaged. Xemnas wasn't fully destroyed. He basically takes a mechanized dragon, tackles the tower that they were standing on, tower crumbles and Xemnas tries to flee. Riku and Sora can't let him go because otherwise the organisation will just start up all over again and he'll cause more problems. So they pursue him and they chase him down. Xemnas then drags them into another boss fight while he's still in his armoured form. They beat him then and there, so let's see, that's 1, 2, pursuit is 3, and next armour is 4. The 5th confrontation is when they're basically in the realm of nothingness. There's nothing there, it's just these 3 people. Xemnas then, berates the fact that light and darkness are eternal and that the nothingness is the same and that he must be eternal. Riku disagrees doesn't disagree, actually agrees with him to say yes, that, light and darkness are eternal. Nothing probably goes on forever too. But him and Sora say, but that doesn't mean that you are eternal, so you're just a blip, just like the rest of everybody. Thus, a very epic final battle does take place. Probably one of the, not hardest, but can be annoying if you don't do it right. What happens is Xemnas is basically at full power at this stage because he's absorbed what was ever left of the Kingdom Hearts that he had, and it made him very powerful. It takes both Sora and Riku basically at their fullest to beat him. When Xemnas is finally defeated, both Sora and Riku are knackered. Riku is kind of damaged a little bit because Xemnas kind of attacked his spine a bit, but Riku's roughly fine. But after this, they're surrounded by a load of hundreds of nobodies and they have to face them off. Which unfortunately you don't get to do that in the game. Like, you don't actually have to face off like hundreds of nobodies, you just have to see this happen, apparently. And then what happens is Sora and Riku then are walking in this realm of nothingness, and eventually they go from the realm of nothingness into the realm of darkness. They are literally in the realm of darkness, in a place called the Dark Margin, or the Dark Shore, or whatever you're calling it. And they finally lament the fact that they've done what they've done. They've saved the realm of light, they've defeated Xemnas, and then they're now stuck in the realm of darkness. Riku even laments on saying that this world is perfect for him and that he should just stay here from where he, from his perspective. Sora tells him that you've been in the darkness too long and that you've kind of got to think positive on this stage. And they both talk about how they're jealous of each other, but they didn't need to be because they're good friends. And Riku does say, well, we've defended the realm of light, perhaps maybe we should stay in the realm of darkness and protect it as well, because this place has been abused. Sora kind of roughly agrees, and they just sit there on the shoreline and listen to the waves, because it reminds them of Destiny Islands. None of them have been home for a long time. Let's see. And then eventually a message washes up on shore. Now, it's something which I didn't actually mention, but I'll do this now. Kairi actually wrote a message to Sora, and she just let it go from Destiny Islands. Now, although the world is separate, in a sense that they're closed off from borders, but there are some unique ways of things still being able to travel through, like messages, for example. Eventually, this message found its way to Sora and Riku. Sora read the message, and after reading this, a portal or a doorway opened up to the realm of light. They both walked out together, and they both managed to get back to Destiny Islands, basically falling from the sky and back into the ocean. The two of them were happy to meet up with everybody again. Donald and Goofy, along with Mickey, are also on Destiny Islands, and it's all happy times. Naminé and Roxas are happy because now they are, although they're now complete beings and they're whole again, they are happy that everyone's happy. And then in the very end, Sora and Riku reflect on, let's say, the time when they were younger, and Riku says, "What a small world," as if like he's not talking about the world, like the world in general that they are on, but the world as a whole. But Sora does say, but it's part of one which is much bigger. So they've actually have become very wise, and Sora's statement is roughly true. He did learn a lot while he was out adventuring. Anyway, another message comes from the king, and it's basically talking about what will be happening very soon. There is a final mix variant of this as well. The final mix variant is basically the same thing as the first one, so there's more bosses. You get to actually face all the members of the organisation as the Data Organisation in a place called the Cavern of Remembrance, which is found under Hollow Bastion, or technically Radiant Garden, because once you complete the world, it actually goes back to being how it used to be called. So once you do that, that doesn't add anything new to the story. There is actually also rare Heartless that you have to face, which are called the Heartless, the Mushroom 13. So they're just like Organisation Heartless that are shaped like mushrooms, and there's 13 of them, and you have to do their unique challenges in order to unlock a Keyblade and whatever. And there's also one more person that you have to face, another secret boss. And he is known as the Lingering Will. He's probably one of the hardest bosses to face in Kingdom Hearts 2 because of how much damage he can deal. There is a secret ending cutscene that you can find once you complete the game on the hardest difficulty, or if you complete all the challenges and so on, and you unlock it that way. And basically that's talking about Birth by Sleep, and that's another Kingdom Hearts game which we'll talk about, I'm not sure next time because it didn't come out then, but it'll come out, what, Coded, 358 by 2 days, no, it's 358 by 2 days which is next, followed on by Coded, then Birth by Sleep, and then Dream Drop Distance. So yeah, that's how it goes. So I do roughly hope everything was okay for everybody. I do hope that you understand roughly where I'm coming from, to a degree. I mean, I'm going off by memory here and not from what I'm looking at, although I should really be doing that, but that's what I'm going off. There were other things as well which was changed gameplay-wise, so I Sora is able to have more than one Keyblade to actually physically use. He's got drive forms. Basically, these are special power-ups, as it were, so if you want to use Valor Form, which is a strength ability, you have to sacrifice Goofy. Not like you kill him or anything, but you can't have him in your party. There's a Wisdom Form, which relies more on magic, so you have to lose Donald, the duck. If you want to use Master Form costs 2 party members, so you can't have Donald or Goofy, they have to go. There's also Limit Form, which basically has all the abilities from the first game. You have Anti-Form, which is basically Sora being possessed by darkness, and there's Final Form, where Sora is able to utilise maximum amount of damage for everything, I guess. There's still summons, which come from the first and even Chain of Memories, you can still use. So yes, I think that's everything. I don't know, but I think that's everything. So I hope it has been good for you, as it has been good for me. I have been me, I've been Charles1K92. I will speak to everyone later. Cheers!